This is Inner Healing Paths podcast. Here we discuss the healing of the mind, body, soul, and spirit through a variety of different paths. We have emotional and spiritually minded conversations centering on ancestral healing, psychology, astrology, yoga, meditation, magic, and indigenous spiritual practices of the world. I am your host, Rosa, and I am so happy you are here. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Inner Healing Paths podcast. I am your host, Rosa, and this episode is actually one of my favorite episodes because we got to talk about so many of the topics that I just love to talk about. So this episode is with Emilia Ortega-Jara. She is a mental health therapist from California. She is a founder of Corazon Counseling, and in our conversation, Emilia shares about how she incorporates a lot of the traditional indigenous wisdom practices into the healing work that she does with her clients and just for herself. She shares how she connects with nature and the elements, how she integrates ancestral practices as a form of healing. And you're going to hear me also share with her what has been helpful and healing for me, what has helped me integrate some of these ancestral practices for the purposes of my own personal healing. So it was such a juicy conversation that we had, and I know you're going to really enjoy it. So without further ado, here's the conversation with Emilia Ortega-Jara. Take a listen. Hi, Emilia.
Hola, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to have this
Yes, of course. Thank you for your patience. I know we had some difficulties initially, but we're here. We made it.
We are here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Emilia, for those that are not familiar with your work, and can you share with us a little bit about what you do, the healing work that you practice, and just about yourself in general?
Yeah, so I have a small little private practice in Corazon Counseling, and I primarily focus on working with folks who are in the process of figuring out their life through transitions, right? Whether it's a mama just having a baby, whether it's a woman going through menopause. I also work with young women who are starting their menses, right? Their that rite of passage of their first moon. So my work really focuses on honoring the rites of passage of specifically women and femme. I do work with families and men as well, but my focus is primarily with women and primarily Latinx, Chicanx, women and families. So really just honoring the rite of passage, the transitions, working with whatever it is that they're presenting themselves with. I like to use a really holistic approach, right? Mind, body, and spirit, looking at the person and environment, including, the elements, including nature. My work is really connected to the practice of returning to the land, right? Returning to our essence, which is Mother Earth. So my work is very much centered in those teachings. I always say that Mother Earth is my primary teacher and elder and guide. So my work revolves around that and really helping folks return to their sacredness, right? In whatever stage they're in. It's something that I just love to do. It just brings me so much joy to see that transformation happen when folks are connecting to whether it's their ancestral practices or a reverence to Mother Earth, or they're planting their little garden, or they're just honoring themselves through self-care practices, that's like, okay, it's good. I don't need to heal the trauma, right? It's like
Yeah.
much responsibility for me to take, but if I could help guide and support people in finding their own medicine, they could heal themselves, because we know we're not going to heal the trauma of our clients, right? But we are here to facilitate that journey for them. And
Oh,
that's what myself as a facilitator.
yeah, I love that. It's so beautiful the way you explain about returning back to the elements, to Mother Earth, and it sounds like much of what you do, that's more or less what you embodied, is just more of a guide, return, helping folks transition back to their roots almost, right? You at all stages
Really
of
for that,
life, right? Yeah.
like I was just writing down this exercise we're going to be doing for the retreat for therapists in a couple of weeks, and that's going to be one of the activities, is like envisioning yourself as a tree, right? The compost, the soil, the roots, the trunk, in which each one of these represents, and how do you embody that. And and it really is, it's so simple, right? Sometimes we make it so complex, or we try to what's the word, romanticize it, or make it like, woohoo, whatever. And it really isn't. It's really
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. I love that analogy, or that what you were describing, that you're going to be guiding therapists to visualize. I mean, that's so powerful. And just you talking just for a few seconds about that, I just got a visual, and just seeing that visual of myself. I for a few seconds I felt that. I really did. And I think especially as therapists, we're not used to seeing ourselves in that in that role of being led also, right? And being to be, I want to say, yeah, I guess guided back, right, to our own roots, because we're so used to being in this role of helping others and guiding others, right, to their own medicine, or guiding others in their healing journey, that we forget that we're also on this journey. I think I don't know. I think as any therapist that is in this field, we're in this field for a reason, right? And a lot of times is because through this process, we, whether consciously or unconsciously, we're trying to mend our own wounds, right? To heal our own, our past and our wounds. So I know that a lot of the work that you do, or at least more recently, is being a coach and actually helping other therapists, right, reconnect.
Yes,
How would you
yes.
describe that? This, because I know you specialize in transitions across different stages of life. How would this transition, this reconnecting back to the elements, how does that look like for the work that you do with therapists?
So it looks like what I'm doing, like retreats. So my
Mm,
vision is really an embodied practice, which I started earlier this year. We did a virtual retreat for therapists, which is very much somatic and using the elements. We held them, we smelled them, we included all of our senses into being in direct connection with the elements. But the dream and the vision, it really is doing these retreats out in nature. So the one
wow.
happening in a couple of weeks on the 13th and 14th, we will be going out to San Diego for a couple of days and doing these rituals and ceremonies with the four elements and the four directions as our guides. And each one of these elements and directions has an embodied practice that the therapists are going to practice and journal on, and then have a discussion in small groups, and really just hoping to that they really embody it, where they could practice it every day or once a week or during a full moon or a new moon, so that they take with them not only this connection back to this ancestral knowledge, because it really is based on ancestral knowledge. And I'm using primarily the connection that I have to my ancestral roots, which are the Nahua people of Mexico. So that's the type of medicine that I'm using. That no matter where you are, like we're all indigenous to the land, right? And all nations and indigenous people have a special connection to the elements and to the four directions. So it really is general to all folks, right? So the important piece here is having that experiential moment and connection and embodiment with nature, and seeing it as your guide, right? As that essence that's going to hold you in those moments where you're feeling overwhelmed after, you know, seeing a client today, or after you had a really difficult session, or after you get subpoenaed by the court for your notes, right? I mean, all these things that are stressors for us. I know for me, I go for my walks, and I feel really, really blessed that I live really close to a canyon. So I go for my walks either in the morning or in the afternoon after work. And that has been such a healing medicine for me, to really keep me grounded, and to do this work from a good place, right? From a place of ease. Because that's my other goal in helping therapists, is like find your ease and your flow. You don't have to be like stressed out or anxious, or you don't have to do it all, right? He's like, find your ease and your flow and find your medicine and do that really well. And abundance is going to come. Okay.
I
But if we
love
don't take care
that.
of ourselves for that, we can't, that's not going to happen, because we're going to keep following this model that's very like Eurocentric, very capitalist model of do, produce, in a cookie cutter framework.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's we end up burning out. I mean, it
Yeah.
happened to me. I mean, in my work that I do, it really is from a place of I've been there, done that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I've experienced that too at certain points in my career because like you said, when we do this type of work, when we're showing up for people in this way, it is, we also show up not just with our education and our license or credential, we're showing up with our breath work, for example, the time that we take for ourselves, the walks that we do, the joy that we feel in our lives, you know, all of that is also part of it, right? So when I'm in session with someone, all of that is also part of it, you know, how I take care of
Exactly.
myself, because otherwise you're it's not helpful to them, right? When you to have a therapist that's burnt out, stressed out, that hasn't slept, that doesn't go on walks or whatever, you know,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel healthy. That vibration translates also into the work that we do. So I think the work that you do with therapists is absolutely critical and essential for the longevity of our career, really. I mean, we really do have to
Yeah,
take care of ourselves
we
if we want to do
do.
this for the long run.
And you can always say that our work is so sacred. Like I don't know what other career or profession, hey, holds space the way we do for folks going through trauma, right? For folks going through like their darkest moments. For
Yes,
I don't know, it's
yes.
maybe priests or those in the clergy, yeah. But the, if I don't, if that's not a reason why we should really honor and take care of ourselves. And not only that, society should honor and take care of ourselves. Like our ancestors used to honor the healers in their community. They used to take care of them. They used to give them food and really honor the healers in the community. Like we're seen as, well, it's your obligation.
Mm,
You should provide free
yeah.
services. Like we don't
Mm-hmm.
have, we're not respected, sadly. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's something I really do think it needs to shift from. First of all, it starts with us and honoring and
Mm-hmm.
respecting ourselves by
Yes.
setting those boundaries and not assuming that we're going to do all this free stuff, right? Or
Yeah.
be accessible,
Mm-hmm.
24/7. um, and then also by society, by our
Yeah.
our folks that train us and give us, give us the
Mm-hmm.
license. And
Yeah.
it's so much deeper, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to that idea of taking care of ourselves first, it's almost like we have to have that oxygen, that analogy of the oxygen in the plane, and the parents are told you have to put it on first, right? And that analogy goes for, when you're the parent. I mean, now, talking like as a mother, I have to make sure I take care of myself. And
Mhm.
now that, we're talking about therapists, like I have to make sure I take care of myself, right? If I want to be helpful in general. So how did you find your path in being in this role now in terms of helping other therapists, or how did you find yourself called to this role?
I think because of my personal burnout,
Oh, yeah.
the feeling of really being isolated, feeling the sense of obligation to, go back to, I've been doing this work for a very long time. I started in 10th grade. I was a peer counselor. I was a gang intervention. I was part of
Oh,
the
I
gang
love that.
intervention committee. I was
Yes.
peer, a camp counselor for the migrant ed program. So this work started at a very young age and it's been nonstop. So I reached a point where I was getting really sick, and I developed an autoimmune disease called Graves' disease, which my own immune system was attacking my thyroid, which it's gone now. I had to take it out. And it was a pretty dark place in my life. And it was directly connected to the stress that I was feeling with the work that I was doing. And that during that time, I was a community organizer. So I was doing more macro level social justice work. And that really burned me out because I was seeing like, yeah, we're doing this macro work, but folks are still having interpersonal, like here I was trying to organize these group of mothers to have better, educational systems for their children or better housing, right? And they were coming to me crying because they were dealing with domestic violence at home, right? Or they were dealing with the trauma as immigrant women coming to the United States. Um, so that's when my work really shifted to doing some clinical work, and I saw like, wow, we can't do community organizing, social justice movement work without doing the healing work. That is such a priority, and I think that's what's missing with a lot of groups. So anyway, that's another topic. um,
Yeah.
so I started seeing how important it was to do this interpersonal clinical, the one-on-one support. And I was just going above and beyond because that's just me. I'm an Aquarius, and I am humanitarian, and I'm thinking always ahead, like how could I improve the world? And a lot of times negating my needs, right? So I burned out. I got really sick, and I said, okay, I need to shift things. I need to shift things, and what is that going to look like? Okay? Even in my practice with what I was counseling, I had a group practice, and then I realized that wasn't for me. Like I don't like to manage people. I don't like following a capitalist model. So it's like I'm going to go back to my simple, you know, one-on-one work, group work. And then I started looking into the possibilities of coaching, right? Like, okay, I really like this model of person-centered, solution focused, in the present, an opportunity where I could use some techniques and modalities that maybe in my therapy practice they're kind of frowned on, like limpias, right? Like these outdoor retreats, like movement, like some somatic practices. Though it's getting more and more like you could use that in therapy, which I love. I think it's really beautiful, but there's still some things that, maybe limpias are not quite as accepted. So that's when I decided to do this Yoloquica, which means heart song, and now coaching
Oh, so
coaching
beautiful.
program.
I love
specific
that name. Yeah.
heart song. I still wanted some connection to corazón counseling,
Yeah.
because I believe in this essence of like helping therapists find their heart song through taking care of themselves. Because I, and to me, what helped me was danza, was going to being in ceremonies, going to sweat lodges, singing songs, playing my drum, right? So it was through song and dance, salsa dancing, right? Really helped me through
So
recovering
beautiful.
from
It,
that
it
burnout.
reminds me of that hashtag, La Cultura Cura, right?
Yes, I love that. De veras, eh?
It's because you're going back to a very primal, very old ancestral part within you, right? And you're tapping into that. And I believe a lot of the medicine that we're searching and seeking is within that very old um, ancestral part. It's almost like
Primal,
this bone
primal.
memory, right? Like if you have your body remembers this. We don't, and cognitively, but our body, ourselves, because when we talk about our ancestors, we are a manifestation of them, right? Our cells, our hair color, everything that about our body is a manifestation of our ancestors, right? Our own lived experiences are because of them, right? So when we connect in such ways, we're tapping into that wisdom and into that healing, and
Yeah,
so
it's in our
so
genetic
powerful.
code. It's in our genetic code. Well, let me
Yes.
share a really quick story of how even my connection to my ancestors began. I was 5 years old. And my parents are very Catholic. We would go every el 12 de diciembre to see the Virgencita de Guadalupe. And there were danzantes, right? The danzantes were the ayoyotes and the copal burning. And I smelled the copal. And man,
Wow. Yeah.
and I still get emotional, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So beautiful.
I knew I was home. Right? The smell of the copal, the
Yes.
hearing the drums, seeing
Mm,
and I was 5 years old. Here we were at church, right? To
so amazing.
praying to this Catholic, but
Yeah.
it's all connected. It's all
Yeah, it is. It
it's
is.
all
It's
part
all
of who we
connected.
are. So it was like that ancestral memory was woken up, and it was at such a time. 5 years old. That's when I started kindergarten, and that's when I was actively being colonized, right? So
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I think back to that moment of hearing that hearing the drums and the tecocolis and smelling the copal and hearing those alabanzas, right? In that same time, I was being taught that English, right? English only, the Pledge of Allegiance, when I was actively being acculturated, assimilated into the American way. When I think about it now, it's like, it was like my ancestors saying, no te olvides. And my dad would always say that, like, you are indigenous, don't forget that. Just no te creas porque naciste aquí, you're all la güera, right? Don't
Oh,
think
I
you're all
love
that.
that.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
And back then I was like, yeah, whatever, dad, right? And I did go through a stage in like middle school, maybe fifth, sixth middle school, where I was ashamed. I was ashamed to speak. I was ashamed that my parents were farm workers. I was ashamed that we were Mexican. Um, but that semillita was still planted, right? When I would hear the drums, when I would smell that, incense, it's like, oh, when I would hear even like South American music, like the flutes, that really called me. And then it wasn't until high school, like my senior year, and then going into Mecha Ventura College, that I started going into community college, and I was part of Mecha, that I
Yeah.
really got into it. Right, got into the being part of the movimiento, and proud of being Chicana and really identifying with that, and really blessed that I had some beautiful teachers and elders. One of them, Joseph Salinas, Truda woman, and may she be resting in peace in the spirit world. She was one of my first elders, and that was back in 1996. And she invited me to a sweat lodge ceremony, and
Wow.
that was it for me. Like, this is it. This is I'm not going back to being ashamed of my indigenous, my indigeneity, right? And though, yeah, I'm light skinned, and though, yeah, I don't know the language of my indigenous, that is okay. And no one could take that away from me. Okay? And I think that's what I want to support others, especially healers that are in that journey of connecting, and feel so much shame and guilt because they don't know the language, they don't know where their ancestors come from, they're light skinned, there's all these things that sadly society and social media are putting these limits on our growth and our discovering who we are without, there's enough shame. We don't need to shame each other. We don't need other folks shaming our journey of discovering who we are.
Wow, my goodness. No, you're okay. It was so beautiful to hear you share those. It sounds like you had very key moments that just woke you up in a way to that seed that has always been there, right? And it sounds like that when were describing that scene, as a 5-year-old smelling copal for the first time, and it's just such a beautiful story because that's how it is. And for you, it happened very young. And I could see that your parents played a huge role, right? In making sure that you remember. And of course, you have to go through your own journey and, as a teenager and all that, but you came back, once you were once again exposed to this medicine through your school. And it's interesting because a lot of folks share how especially going to college and getting exposed to just different kinds of people, and somehow you get brought back, and whether for the first time or again, but it sounds like it's such a critical stage in our development, right? As young adults, 18, 19, I mean, not even young adults, we're still kids, right? 18, 19-year-olds. And that's the time where we have the energy to just explore, and our brain is just soaking it all in. And for you, this is a time where you reconnected back to your roots. And it sounds like you had some great mentors along the way.
Yeah, just really blessed for that. Really blessed for that.
And we need that.
Yeah.
We need mentors.
And they're dying. Our mentors, our guides, they're
Elders,
teachers. Our
teachers.
elders.
Yes, absolutely.
They're not, so I think it's important. Something I do want to share, that I think it's really important to connect to those elders, right? To share in it, and they don't, and it's okay if you don't know a medicine elder, right? But just the elders in general.
Yeah, yes.
Having those conversations with your own family members,
absolutely,
right? You'd be surprised. Like when I talked to my abuelita, my dad's mom, like she told me a story that her grandmother, which was indigenous, would make them petates. And she would sell them on the street, which I am thinking
yes,
about.
I know what it is. It's like a little like a bed, like a makeshift bed, right? With straw, like
made out of straw. Yep.
Made out of straw. Yeah, and that's where people sleep, right? There's a name for it. I just can't remember the name.
I think it's petate or metate.
It's petate. Yeah, it's petate. But there's a name, and there's in English for it, but I can't remember that name. But yeah, it's basically just a spot on, so you put it on the floor, and that's where you sleep.
That's where you sleep. And it was used for ceremonial, like the Nahuatl people or indigenous people throughout Mexico would use it as a ceremonial place where birth happened. And also they would wrap their dead. Right? You not only birth, and you would have meals, and it was such a sacred piece of connection to the land, right?
Wow, that's so beautiful that you say that, especially with what you described with what you do, that you help folks transition across different stages of life. And this petate is almost like, so in a way, is representative of you, right? Where you come from.
Hearing that connection with my abuelita, Vivi's abuelita, what she used to do. And I just thought, and this was just a conversation that I had with my abuelita. It's like, oh, what did my abuelita do? Like, what did they do? Like, how did they survive? And this was just recently, So my point is, talk to your abuelitos and abuelitas. You'd be surprised. Ask them the birth stories, like how, how were their births, or how did they birth their babies? And there's so much medicine around the practices of both birth and cómo enterraban a sus muertitos. What were those prayers or those songs, or what were the rituals? That's where you start. You don't have to go to an elder in the community, a medicine woman, a medicine man, right? You go to your lineage, even better.
Absolutely. Go to, start with who's in your family, because they have so much knowledge. And, I experienced that because for a long time, I was searching and, connecting with folks that have so much medicine, so much wisdom, of course, but they weren't in my lineage, right? They were just people that I came in contact with, and I learned so much. And then at some point over the course I realized, let me just talk to my mom about this stuff. And little did I know that she has so much knowledge and wisdom that it's almost like she was just waiting, for me to ask, for her to teach me. And so I think that's one of the beautiful things about connecting with your ancestors, because ultimately you're connecting back to you. And if you are lucky enough to still have your grandparents and of course your parents, and you have those elders in your family still with you, what a privilege it is to have this awareness of wanting to connect with your roots and to have them in your life, right?
Yeah. And something else I would invite folks to do, if you don't have those elders in your life or in the community, go to the trees, right? Go to nature, go to the place
I love that.
lineage is from. Like if you're from Jalisco, Michoacan, or Guanajuato, or whatever, try. And if you can't travel for, the reasons, they go to the place where you live, right? Like if you live in the 805, go to like the ocean, or be in connection to the oak trees. Or if you live here in the IE, right, have connection to the canyons here, and to the mountains. So it's be in connection to the elders and ancestors of the place that you live in, which I always say our ancestors they're not necessarily the two-legged, right? They're four-legged, they're creepy crawlers, they're the mushrooms, there's the trees, or the rocks, our abuelito, the piedras, right? The mountains, the hills, those are our ancestors too.
I love
Go
that.
to them and ask for that guidance, ask for that connection, ask for the dreams. It's the intention.
And that's really when it comes down to it, is when you set the intention to reconnect, you will reconnect, whether you have those elders in your life in person now, or whether you just have the memories, the stories, and nature, right? You will, if that's your intention, you'll be I guess reconnected to that old wise parts that hold that medicine for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, well, this was such a beautiful conversation, and I'm so glad we didn't plan it. It just kind of evolved, right?
It evolved.
And it's just, that's what I love about, having talks like this, when like we go in with some idea, right? But then we just allow the conversation to flow. And thank you so much for those beautiful stories that you shared. And it's just, it really hit home, especially because, I was mentioning to you, I had a crazy morning, and just hearing you talk and share what you do for others, especially for other therapists, it just really resonated with me. And I think I just had a moment where I'm like, okay, I need to come back. I need to go back to my elements, to what grounds me. And that tree visual that you described, it's so powerful. And those therapists are going to be attending your retreat next week. I'm sure are going to be so blessed to be, really held by you, right? In this, in nature and in community, that the community that you're making.
In community.
Yes.
That's really important, because our work is really isolating. So hopefully you could join us, Rosa.
Yes, no, and I when you posted that, I talked about it with my husband. I said, how can we make this work? Because I have a baby and all that, and it just didn't work out with that particular weekend. But I was hoping So I did sign up. I don't know if you saw me, but I did sign up for the wait list, and I was waiting for your email, and then I'm like, oh, it's that weekend, I can't make it. But I'm hoping to make it to one of the upcoming retreats because it looks just exactly what I'm needing at this point.
Mhm.
So thank you for offering that. And for
Cool.
folks that would love to work with you and see more about the work that you do, how can they find you?
So I do have an Instagram, which is kind of easy to, because in that Instagram, there's a link to my website. It's Yolo Cuica, or go to my website, Yolo Cuica. Maybe you could write it down.
Yeah,
You
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And, or also Corazon Counseling. Folks want some therapy. I also do a lot of counseling for therapists as well. That's one of my specializations, is working with therapists in the therapeutic and also in the coaching. So I support them. A lot of times, actually, they come to me for coaching, but we realize what they really need is some therapy. Then we'll go there. Right. So I'm able to do both. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom with us. And I look forward to another conversation with you like this. Hopefully you can come back again at another
Yes, I would
time.
love to. Thank you, Rosa, for
Of
holding this space,
course.
feeling safe to share these stories. So,
Oh, of
yeah, many
course.
blessings to you.
Thank you. I received that. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you found it healing and nourishing to your mind and soul. If there's a friend that you think would benefit from listening to this information, please share it. Share about our podcast. If you feel called to, please leave us a review, as this really, really helps boost our presence here in Apple Podcasts, and it makes it easier for others to find us. To stay up to date on new episode releases and special events and projects that I'm working on, you can follow us on Instagram at Inner Healing Paths Podcast. And you can subscribe to my newsletter by going to my website, which is rosashetty.lcsw.com. And I will include this information and links in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to sharing with you again next time.